Good evening, everybody. This is Jason here with another interview, and I have to say this one here is one that I am truly excited about a ton. I am sitting with the one and only Coree Woltering. Um, I don't even know where to start with all the stuff you've done. We'll start out by saying you're a North Face athlete, and who doesn't love the North Face stuff? One Tunnel Hill. He has a couple of FKTs on some pretty tough trails. Um, he's done something called the Eco Challenge, which is something that I think if you haven't watched it, I would urge you to watch it because it is one of the coolest things I think I've ever seen in my life. I could just go on, and which I probably will here in a minute when I start talking. We start diving in to Coree's running and racing and all the other different things he's doing. So thank you for joining me, Coree. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So I guess just if I'll tell a quick little story and then we'll get into get into your running. When I first got into ultra running, I listened to the East Coast Trail and Ultra podcast that Ryan Pluckelman hosted. And your interview was one of the very first interviews I heard about ultra running. And I believe it was the interview that you had just did with them after you'd won Tunnel Hill. And I remember them talking about how, there's this guy and he's super fast and he wears Speedos. And what was funny about all that was I didn't realize at the time how flipping cold it is at Tunnel Hill. And after running Tunnel Hill, I was like, holy cow, that is one cold ass race. I can't imagine running in some shorty shorts like that and getting it done like that. So that was my first introduction to you. And now I'm sitting here talking with you. So it's pretty cool stuff. So anyway, so I guess, how did your running begin? I mean, did you begin like everybody else, or give us a little bit of background on your whole running journey, how it
Yeah,
started?
totally. Tunnel Hill is definitely a very cold race for November in Southern Illinois. And it's always funny because it's always like the first cold weekend of November, or even of like the year, basically. So I always laugh at that because I've been to Tunnel Hill, I guess 3 times, and it's always been in the 20s at the start.
Yeah.
So, oh well. Um, yeah, so running, I mean, I did track and field in grade school, also played baseball, was also a soccer player, also swam for the YMCA, and then swam for a high school swim team, ran track and field and cross country, soccer. So running was always fun, but it was never like my main sport, because I was a 200, 400, 800 meter runner. I was actually a better soccer player than I was at track and field and cross country, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so running was always like, well, running was always supposed to be the punishment for the other sports that I was doing. But it was always funny because I'd show up late to baseball practice, so the coach would make me run. But really, is just starting what ended up being what I do now. So that's kind of funny. Um, I don't know what else.
So I guess, let's face it, ultra running, normal people don't ultra run. It takes a special kind of person to get out there and run these extremely long races, right? We're talking, most people, and a huge accomplishment is a half marathon, right? I mean, if you can run a half marathon, that's a big deal. Like I paced my tattoo artist this past fall. I paced a local half marathon, and I paced my tattoo artist. through it, and she was so stoked that she'd ran 13 miles, right? So it's a huge deal to run a half marathon. It's even a bigger deal to run a marathon. And then you think about what we do, right? We run 50Ks, 50 miles, 100 miles, right? What was the draw to first to get into the ultra game? And the other thing was, what was the draw to get on the trail in the ultra game, right? So, because we know that there's some road ultra races, right? There's one here in Tennessee, Strolling Jim, which is terribly difficult. But you know, what brought you to the ultra game?
That's a great question because in college, even through college, I said that I would never run a marathon. I was a 200, 400, 800 meter runner, would go up to the mile if I absolutely had to. I did still run cross country in high school and college. So in Illinois, that was I guess 3 miles for cross country, and then Division 3 is 8 kilometers. And absolutely hated it. It was not anything I wanted to do. But just to stay in shape, I did it anyway. And in college, it was one of those things where I loved the track, loved indoor track, outdoor track was great. Cross country was always like, okay, here we go, let's get through the next 6 months. So I was injured a lot early in basically end of high school and beginning of college. I tore my meniscus playing soccer as a junior in high school. And then my senior year, I had 3 concussions playing soccer. And so they basically were like, hey, you're not going to play soccer in college and you're going to run instead. So that was, I was okay with that. I mean, I wanted to play soccer in college, but running ended up being what I did. And even through my sophomore year of college or so, I thought that anything over 10 miles was just the devil. I didn't want anything to do with it. And just through multiple injuries, it was like, okay, I have another stress fracture, I have another whatever. So I was always back in the pool. And then finally I bought a bike. And then now it's like, wait a second, I have a bike, I can swim, and I know how to run. It's like, swim, bike, run, triathlon. This totally makes sense. So I guess between sophomore and junior year, I signed up for my first, I guess I did a sprint triathlon and then maybe an Olympic distance, and absolutely loved it. It was fun. It was way longer than anything I had really done before, but I really enjoyed it. So then just somehow I got talked into signing up for my first half Ironman while I was still in college. So, I mean, half of the year I'm focused on running a fast 400 and 800. And then it's like, oh, track season's over. Now we're going into half Ironman training. So signed up for my first half Ironman and qualified for the 70.3 World Championships in my first half Ironman. Which I had an okay swim, I had an okay bike, and then I believe I ran maybe like 122 for the half marathon of the half Ironman, and that got me a spot to Worlds. So all of a sudden it's like, oh, I guess I do like running longer than that. So here I am in college, and now I have a track season to deal with. I have a cross country season to deal with, and I also have a spot into the World Championships. So while I was in college, I qualified for the half Ironman World Championships twice. By the time I was out of college, I was running like 119 or so for the half marathon at the end of the half Ironman, and I was running about 113 for the half in just an open half. So it was.
Quick question. Were you sponsored during that time because you were doing so well?
No. Nope.
Really?
Just running for the college and, racking up, I guess, world championship qualifications. And so it was just really funny. So after that, after college, I moved from Illinois out to Boulder, Colorado, thinking I wanted to become a professional triathlete because, you know, everyone goes to Boulder and tries to do that. Um, and I was supposed to be working for a running store out there, but they weren't quite open when I moved out there. So I took a job in construction, which I knew very little about construction, but I knew that I could make good money. And if I got up early enough, I could still train, work all day, and then train after work. And so basically, it's just like train, work, eat, sleep. There you go. And did that for a few months and then raced worlds. And I mean, I had the best race of my life, really, just coming off of going from Illinois up to altitude training and everything. I think it all just kind of clicked because Worlds that year is Mont Tremblant, Canada, and had a pretty cold swim. And I just remember it was a hilly bike and a hilly run, and just had the race of my life there. But in Boulder, I was also hanging out with a bunch of trail runners, mountain
Mm-hmm.
bikers. And so my love for the road stuff kind of started going away. And, you know, I was going out on more trail runs, I was going out on the mountain bike. And one of my friends was like, hey, I need a pacer and a crew person for the Leadville 100. And I just looked at him as like, the Leadville what? He's like, yeah, the Leadville 100. I'm like, 100 what? He's like, 100 miles. Like, I'm doing a trail race that's 100 miles. And that just blew my mind. As like, wait a second, like there's a race that's 100 miles. Okay, like what is this thing? And where is Leadville? And so here I am living in Boulder. I don't even know where Leadville is. Don't know anything about this race. So that is when I got my introduction to the Leadville 100. Went up and paced part of that race, crewed for part of it, and I was just hooked on trail running after that.
Wow, that is awesome because that it's almost like it was meant to be for you that you landed in Boulder and you because let's face it, there's so many trail runners in Boulder, and then you went from there and you landed in Leadville, and that's like one of the trail meccas for us here in the U.S. where you want to be, right? I mean, like Leadville is like it's like one of the places to be, and so you cracked into the trail running scene, and I guess you started training, and obviously your fitness was on point from all the triathlon stuff you were doing. So it seems like that just translated right over to it. Now, did you anticipate that you were going to have the success that you did straight out of the gate like you did?
Not really. And so that's the really funny part about it because my friends in Boulder and stuff, they're like, yeah, we know that you want to become a professional triathlete, but they're like, we really think you should try this trail running thing. And like, no, 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 I moved here to become a professional triathlete. Like, I have to stick to my schedule. I have to
Mm-hmm.
do everything on the road, you know, and they're like, oh, no, no, no. Like, you're going to start doing easy days on the trail with us. You're going to come with us out on the mountain bikes. Like, here we go. And I was like, no, but I'm really trying to go pro in this thing, you know, and they're like, trust us, like you will go pro in something, but it's not going to be triathlon. And I was like, no, like I'm so focused on this. I think it's going to happen. And they're like, if you focus on this for maybe a year, they're like, they're like, you will figure it out. So after pacing my friend at Leadville, I told my coach, as like, hey, you know, I think I actually want to focus on mountain biking and trail running. Just give it a try for a year. Just see what happens. And then I'll come back to triathlon. And my coach is like, yeah, that's totally a great idea. It's good to switch things up. He's like, if you keep training, you're not going to lose fitness. And he goes, really, the difference between like road cycling and mountain biking, he goes, with your fitness, you'll be able to switch back and forth, like no big deal. So living in Boulder was fun, but then later in the year I actually moved up to Leadville because I was like, if I'm gonna focus on trail running, I'm going all in.
Right.
So I moved up to Leadville and survived a winter up there. And I'm not a fan of winter. So moving up to Leadville late in the year is probably not the smartest thing I did, but I will say it made me really tough. So then, I just kind of trained through the winter. I was working in Vale, living in Leadville. And so that was just kind of a that was a lesson in just persistence, because I mean it's 37 miles each way, and I was driving down the mountain and up the mountain. So I was working basically from 10 a.m. till midnight 4 days a week, and then I'd have 3 days off, and then I'd have 4 days off and 3 days on. So like it ended up being this perfect schedule for training.
Mm-hmm.
And because honestly, it's like the days that I was working, I'd still have to drive back and forth, but I didn't really sleep a lot, and I'd still get in at least like an hour run on those days. But then the days I was off, I could sleep in, and then I could go run for 4 or 5 hours if I wanted to. So that was awesome. But yeah, so anyway, going into that next year, it was kind of this test of like, okay, was it a smart idea to leave triathlon road stuff for the trail or what? So I think it was April, no, it was May of that year. So this would be 2015, maybe. In May, I went back to Illinois and ran a half marathon and a 10K on the track, and a couple other short races, and like set PRs in everything that I was running. And that was just from base miles in Leadville over the winter. So it's like, okay, this is working. So then I went back up to Leadville, ran Silver Rush 50 miles, my first 50 mile, finished fourth there and missed the podium by 52 seconds, and was absolutely devastated. I was like, I'm no good at trail running. I should quit. Like it's the end of the world. Like I should go back to triathlon and stuff. And people are like, but you still finished fourth. Like you got a spot into the Leadville 100. Like what's wrong? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, well, I didn't win though. And they're like, no, but you finished fourth in your first 50 mile. And it's like, oh, I guess that is probably okay. And so it was just so funny how I looked at things back then compared to now, because now I'd be thrilled. But anyway, so I got my spot into the Leadville 100 and then didn't run Leadville. But that kind of set everything off for just, getting into all of the trail stuff that I've done now.
So what was the draw to Tunnel Hill? Because you talked about not being a fan of the cold, and Tunnel Hill arguably was your breakout race, right? I mean, because Tunnel Hill is a pretty I guess back then it probably wasn't as notable, but it's still pretty notable, right? Because Steve Durbin's kind of a big deal, right? And so you show up at Tunnel Hill, which is a pretty a pretty a pretty big race there, and you won you won first place, and it was a pretty good time there. And I mean, when you showed up at Tunnel Hill, did you I guess have the did you feel like you were going to just run away with that race and win it?
Um, so the first time I went to Tunnel Hill, I was still living out west, and I flew back for Tunnel Hill, flew back to Illinois to visit family, and then was going to Tunnel Hill. And I was actually training for the Indianapolis Marathon. And I was living in Vegas at the time and was training for Indianapolis and was hoping to run as close as possible to the Olympic trials qualifying standard for the marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for whatever reason, I just chose not to go to Indianapolis and ran Tunnel Hill a week later. I don't really remember what the draw was to not go to Tunnel Hill, but then to like email Steve on like Tuesday of Tunnel Hill week being like, hey, I think I'm in shape. Can I come run Tunnel Hill, you know? And so the first year I was there, it was like me, Johnny Cash, and I can't remember who else is in that lead pack. And we all said that we were going to go out conservative and just try to run under 540 to hit the qualifying standard for the USA 100K team, because you can also qualify in a 50-mile race. And I just remember we did not go out at 540. Like, we did not go out at the pace we needed to run a 540. We went out to run way faster than that. And it ended up being a pretty much a very slow last 10 miles to the finish, just trying to finish. But I won it, I guess it was 2015. I won it in maybe like 6:18 that year. And I was happy with that just to get the win, because I mean, that was only my second, yeah, that was my second 50-mile race. So I was happy with that. And like running 6:18, I thought was pretty good. I mean, I wasn't thrilled with running 6:18, but I was happy to win. So then I just remember I focused on that for another year. And basically for 2016, my goals were I wanted to do well at American River 50-mile in April. I wanted to hopefully run as close as possible to the Olympic trials qualifying standard in the marathon, and wanted to go back and win Tunnel Hill again. And so, I mean, I finished fourth I finished fourth at American River 50, which is the oldest and one of the largest 50 miles races in the country. Finished second at, the Mercedes Marathon down in Birmingham, ran 2:26 at Chicago Marathon, and then 5 weeks later ran 5 hours and 30 minutes at Tunnel Hill. And
Crazy.
Yeah, and that was like my breakout race though. The year that I ran 5:30, it was just a really good year for me, but it was also like, that was absolutely the cherry on top of the year.
Oh yeah, it was huge. I mean, 5:30 there, and I mean I don't think there was anybody close to you, if I remember correctly. Looking over it, just unbelievably fast time out there, and it's again, what makes that course hard is that you're not sure what kind of weather you're going to get at all, right? I mean, it's a flat course. It's funny. It's funny because it's a flat and fast course, but then you run into the elements and you don't know what's going to happen to you out there, and it's a very tough race. So you broke out there, and I guess that was kind of, I guess, just, and you ran so much. I don't want to go through all your races, but it seems like from there you just kind of took off, right? And like you really jumped around to some really tough races. And I guess before we get into, I guess got a couple I wanted to ask you about, but like before we get into some of those, when did the short speedo type running attire, what was the draw to that? I mean, was it just to be lighter and faster, or what was that?
Yeah. So I was down in Florida for a 50K race back in like April of 2015 or something like that. And I flew to this race, and of course I packed stuff to go to the beach after the race, but I apparently didn't pack running shorts with me. So here I am, I flew in the day before the race, then here I am, on race day, and it's like, oh, I have Speedos and a crop top with me, but I don't actually have like my racing shorts. And they're just like, it's Florida, no one cares, just wear a Speedo, you'll be fine. So I did, and then I won the race, and that's like the one picture that everybody remembers of me back from early racing. So that's how it happened, and now that's just what it is.
So it's like your signature thing. You got to go with it now, because like once you once you get that, like it's your thing. You can't let that go. I mean, it's like
Yep.
it's the home run. So, and what's interesting is, when you look at your pedigree of races, like you do some stuff that probably some people have never even heard of, but are really tough races. And one that really stood out to me, and I would not have even known about this race, but I have some friends that ran it and said it was very challenging, was the Dunes race down in Florida, right? How hard is it to run in the sand in Florida? I can't even imagine. And I mean, and you did pretty well at it too. So I mean, so what was, you know, talk about that a little bit, because that's a very tough environment. Running on sand is very tough in general.
Yeah, that race is it's very well put on, but it is such a hard race. So in 2015 or 2016, I did the 50K down there. And that's the 50K itself is hard just because it's in April. So it's already hot as hell down there. It's humid. And then this whole race is just on either hard packed sand or sugar sand. And then you have the dunes of heaven, the dunes of hell. So you think of Florida being flat. I mean, this race really isn't flat. And then, I mean, these sand dunes are just sugar sand dunes. And so that's miserable. And then I'm dumb enough that I couldn't get, just once. Like, most people would be like, once is good. But I was like, nope, let's go back for the 100-mile race as my first 100. Um, and so I went back down in 2017 and ran my first 100-miler, the Dunes 100. And basically, it's 4 25-mile loops on sand dunes. And so it was in February that year. It's now in April, but it was in February that year. And even then, the daytime high was 84 degrees, heat index of 103.
Holy
And
cow.
yes, and I flew in from Illinois, and I believe when I left Illinois, we were in the single digits. So here I am coming down to a race that's almost 80 degrees warmer than
Wow.
where I left. And I'm racing, and I've only been sunburnt once in my life, and it was at that race. Like, that is how intense the sun was. And it was miserable. Just it's 4 loops. It's I don't even know how much elevation gain is in it, but I just remember thinking like, okay, first loop, it started at I think 5 a.m. So first loop wasn't too bad. It wasn't can't say it wasn't that hot. It was still probably like 70 degrees. But at least the sun wasn't up for most of that first loop. But then the second loop, I just remember the sun being up and then finally being like really up and just being absolutely miserable for all of loop 2. And then going into loop 3, I was still in the lead at this point also. And so like here I am leading my first 100-mile race. Like I don't even know what's going on and what I'm doing. And so here I am for miles like 50 to 75. And I just remember somewhere around, it's about mile 60 or so, where I'm like, I think I'm in trouble. Like, I'm super dehydrated. I've never run this far before. My first 100K was only 20 days before this race. So here I am, like, going way farther than I've ever run before. I'm in a climate that's absolutely not what I'm used to. And my legs are just screaming at me. My mind is like, oh my goodness, like, why are you out here? I remember coming into the aid station at mile 75 and sitting in that chair for over an hour, just absolutely devastated. Like, okay, like I've made it 75 miles. Like I could quit now and be done. And like, I can go back to the hotel, get in the hot tub, like get in the pool, whatever. Like I can end all of this misery because I didn't think I was going to be able to run another 25-mile loop. And I also just didn't want to go back out there and be out
Mhm.
there for like all 30 hours because So at mile 75, I think I was only maybe 15 hours into the race at that point. And so people are like, you could walk the rest of this. You have 30 hours to finish. Like, you could walk it. And like, that sounds awful. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. But my pacer showed up, and my pacer had like a mini boombox on one shoulder and a disco ball on the other shoulder. And he's like, hey, I'm here for, the final 25-mile loop. I was like, you can go home because I'm not going out there. And so, because I flew to this race without my normal crew, without like my normal pacers, anything like that. So everyone there is just kind of like, well, let's try to get him out of the chair. Like, let's something. Well, finally, after sitting there long enough, I had some ramen noodles, some coconut water, and just finally got my head wrapped around the fact that I had less than a marathon to run. I was like, okay, we can do this, whatever. We'll start out walking and then we can run it if things are feeling good. Like, talked myself into it. I still finished the final loop in like 4 hours and 15 minutes. Um, and so, and so I went from leading the race to being like ninth to leave the aid station at mile 75 to finishing third. And like first and second were like 16 minutes ahead of me at that point. So it was just like the story of like highs and lows in life in a day. And yeah.
So you sat for an hour.
Yep.
And you still came in third.
Yep. Like I was, it was one of those things where had I just, I mean, it was my first 100-mile race, but like, had I just not sat in that chair and just left that aid station and just started walking, I probably would have won the race.
Well, I mean, you know all the memes around the chair, right? I mean, you see it all over Instagram. So, I mean,
Oh yeah.
the chair is very welcoming, especially
Oh yeah.
especially in 100-mile races. So, so and like I said, that's not one that you probably get asked a lot about, but it's one that stood out to me because I had friends that ran that race and they talked to me and used the same words you use: miserable, hot, uncomfortable, just really hard race. And I think it's cool to see people go out and do races that, look, everybody's heard of Western States, everybody's heard of Leadville, everybody's heard of Hard Rock, Tunnel Hill. I wonder how many people's heard of Dunes, right? Probably not a ton. And it's a hard ass race. I mean, so I mean, I just had to ask you about that. So jumping around a little bit, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your FKTs. And for FKTs are not easy things to do. And there, you've got three, but a couple of them really stand out. And the one that really blows my mind is that Ice Age Trail. I mean, it's like it's over 800 miles. I mean, you go from a guy who didn't want to run, right? And now you're running 800 miles and you're setting the fastest time in that 800 miles. So, first off, talk to me about the progression of moving, of moving into that fastest known FKT mindset, because that's not for everybody, right? I mean, that takes a special kind of person with a special kind of mindset that can jump in and really accomplish FKTs, right? Because not everybody's name is got an FKT beside it. So that Ice Age Trail, what was the draw on getting that one?
Yeah. So Ice Age is actually 1,200 miles. And basically, Ice Age was the product of having fitness and being really bored with COVID. So I had planned, to have a really awesome 2020, And I was like, oh, 2020 is going to be a great year, because like 2019 was a 2019 was my first year running for the North Face. And so with that, there was a lot of international travel that came with that for racing. And I was very hit or miss in 2019. It's like I would have a great race, or I could just have a couple of races that I couldn't finish. And a lot of that was just getting used to jet lag, flying Chicago to Hong Kong, Chicago to Japan, stuff like that. And then like in South America, food poisoning. I had salmonella in South America, like
Good grief.
just yeah. So like all of these little things that were happening that ended up being big things that I just wasn't really thinking about. So 2019, then the back half of the year is mainly focused on Eco Challenge. So then to go from Eco Challenge into 2020, I was like, okay, we're going to have a great year this year. We're going to focus on Black Canyon, try to get a golden ticket at Black Canyon, and then, just do like golden ticket race, Western states, and then whatever happens the second half of the year, just kind of figure that out based on Western states. And just like with most of my plans, a lot of things don't always go as I hope they will, and there seem to be a lot of distractions and just a lot of random things that happen. And unfortunately, at Black Canyon in 2020, I was peeing blood at mile 19 and ended up dropping at 60K. So didn't get the golden ticket there, and didn't really know what I was going to do. So basically I was like, okay, I need to refocus. Like, let's get ready for canyons. Let's go after another golden ticket there. So I signed up for Way Too Cool 50K and ran pretty decent there. And then I remember getting to the Sacramento airport the Monday after Way Too Cool, and everything's like, oh, COVID-19, like there's this thing going around, and now we're going to start asking people to wear masks when they're indoors, and we're going to ask people to shut down. And it's like, I was in the airport as they're like, all of this is hitting the news, and like new regulations are coming out, and like new quarantine rules were coming out. And it's like, hey, but I'm already in California and I have to get back home. And it's like, oh, cool, you're supposed to quarantine, I guess, or whatever. And I'm like, I don't even know if I have it. Like, what is it? And so basically I got back to Illinois, and Illinois shut everything down. Like even our parks were shut down, our trails were shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am in Illinois, in a place that didn't really have a ton of trails anyway. And now they're like, cool, even the trails that we do have, you can't get on them. And so I'm like, oh, this is fun. So I guess I'm going to be a road runner for a while. And I remember when we all thought it was going to be like 2 weeks. So it's like, okay, I can deal with this. 2 weeks of road running. It's no big deal. Then I can get back on trails and life is going to go on. And then it just didn't. So here I am in Illinois, still putting in, like these 100-mile weeks on road, still doing workouts, still using all this fitness I had built up from training for Black Canyon. And it was like, oh, I'm just going to keep focusing on canyons, because hopefully the world is going to be fixed by canyons and I can go after that golden ticket. And then it's like, oh, like, now we're going to have an elite only race at canyons, and hopefully that will happen. And then it's like the week of that, and they're like, we're actually not having the race at all. And, and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. I was like, I have all of this fitness built up and I absolutely need to use it on something. So, one of the things I did was I ran every street of my hometown, Ottawa, Illinois, which ended up being like 205 miles that I did over, I think, 11 days. Started the 1st of April, ended on Easter Sunday. And we raised like $15,000 for small businesses that had to shut down due to COVID, and bought gift certificates from them, and blah, 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 blah. So that was really cool. And like, once again, another big fitness bump with nothing to use it on. So I'm like, what can I do? so that's when I started looking at, FKTs. And I realized that I do a lot of training on the Ice Age Trail when I'm in Illinois because it's up in Wisconsin. So from my house, it's like 90 minutes to the southern portion of it. And I said, okay, like I've never done anything like this before, but you know what? Like I should go after this, June 1st. And so at that time it was like, cool. My friends, they didn't have to go into work because work was shut down. And so I'm like, okay, I have a crew. The Ice Age Trail is open because Wisconsin didn't really shut down that much. So I'm like, you know what? Cool. Like, let's go after this. And while we're at it, let's raise money for Feeding America.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so basically to get ready for this, I took 3 trips up to Wisconsin and did back to back to back long runs on it on 3 different sections of the trail. So I'd do like 3 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours one week, and then like 4, 5, 4, and then 3, 4, 3 another week, and just, covered like 60 miles of trail in just different sections of it over those 3 weeks. And then June 1st, I started the Ice Age Trail. And it was like there wasn't a ton of planning that went into it. I didn't know a ton about all of the trail. I just knew that I had a crew that was dedicated to being out there, and I had 1,200 miles to cover on foot.
Wow. It's amazing, man. That's just crazy stuff right there. And you got it. I mean, that's just a crazy amount of distance. What, it took you around, a little bit over 21 days, is that right?
Yep.
That's crazy. That is nuts. What's interesting is you went from we have the gamuts of Wisconsin running, and then you come down here to you come down and you grab that Pinhoti Trail. What was, compared? I mean, obviously the Pinhoti is shorter, but running wise, was it similar type of running that, comparatively terrain and whatnot? Did you run into that, or was it just a completely different ball game for you?
Completely different. So Ice Age probably has, I'm going to say 500 miles of road in it. And then there's quite a bit of rail trail. And then there's some pretty technical stuff, some really like wet and sloppy stuff on Ice Age as well. But going west to east, you hit like your first 350 miles are the most technical, the most wet. And basically, if you make it through the first 350 miles, then your chances of finishing are greatly increased after that. And so, I mean, over 1,200 miles, I think it's a total of 80,000 feet of elevation gain, with
Nice.
once again, with most of that coming in the first probably 500 miles. So, I mean, the last part of it is very flat. Whereas like Pinhoti is 350 miles with 50,000 feet of elevation gain. There's still plenty of road on Pinhoti, but even the road is not flat. And by doing it in April, like early April, it was still getting down into the 20s at night, but we had days that were in the 80s. And I'm just like, how is there this big of a temperature swing in April in Alabama and Georgia? And it's also interesting because I actually didn't plan on doing Pinhoti. I came down for the Stillhouse 100K just outside of Chattanooga, but I had been dealing with a back issue for a while. And at like mile 13 of Stillhouse, I took a fall, just did something to my back, re-aggravated all of that. So I actually was to the point that I had to walk back up to so it's about 14 miles in, I guess. And so I had to walk back to the aid station at mile 13. And it took me about an hour to walk a mile back up to the aid station because I just couldn't even walk. So then when I get there, I couldn't actually bend over to like put myself in a chair or lay down. So they had to physically pick me up and lay me on the ground just to get my back loosened up enough that I could even just change out of my clothes, like all of that stuff. So Michael and Robin and Ginny, the race directors, like they're awesome. They got me in to see a chiropractor in Chattanooga. And luckily that kind of fixed the issue. And I was like, hey, like I have all this fitness built up. Like I am not letting this go to waste. And so we stayed in Chattanooga for another week. And I was watching YouTube videos on the Pinhoti Trail. So like I had never even stepped foot on the Pinhoti Trail before the day I started it. And it was like, cool, I've watched some videos on this. I have fitness, so let's go after it.
Wow. And you got that one too. And what's interesting is a lot of folks don't know, but I've never ran it, but I've heard that that Stillhouse race can be pretty damn tough itself. And pretty much most of Rock Creek's events, stump jump is not exactly a snoozer. Stillhouse is tough. You look at River Gorge is a shorter race. That one is definitely tough. I think I may run that one myself next month, next month. All solid races, all tough races too. So, I mean, just amazing stuff. So, and, I guess we can back up a little bit. You talked a little bit about that eco challenge. How did you get involved with the eco challenge? Because I'll be honest with you, I had not even heard of it. And then I saw that you were doing it. And all of a sudden I was like, I've got to watch it, because I had no idea what it's about. And then I started watching it. I was like, this is some hard stuff. I mean, how did you get involved with that?
Yeah, that's a great question because some days I still ask myself that. Yeah, so I mean, I remember Eco Challenge being on TV, like 12 years ago, 13 years ago, whatever it was. And I was just thought, I'm like, cool, it's like this show, it's like a game on TV. Like, there's no way they're actually doing all of that stuff. And these people are all crazy. And here we go. So then I hadn't heard of it, in basically a decade. And then one day I'm on Instagram and I get a message from Clifton Lyles. And he's like, hey, I'm just reaching out to you. He's like, I'm a big fan of yours, of your trail running. And he's like, so I'm trying to put together the first all African-American team to do an eco challenge. Would you be interested in doing this? It's in Fiji and it's this year. And I was like, it was like Eco Challenge. I was like, why do I know that name? So I Googled it and I'm like, oh, Eco Challenge. I'm like, okay. But then I didn't even know where Fiji was. So then I Googled pictures of Fiji and I see white sand beaches and blue water and, like all these, like these huts over the water and like all this stuff. So I'm like, oh yeah, Fiji. I would love to go to Fiji. Of course I'll do Eco Challenge.
You're like, I'm in. I mean, come on.
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, this is going to be awesome. Like, because once again, I didn't think that people actually did all of this stuff that they show on there. So I was like, yeah, here we go. And so he's like, great. Well, we have to send in an audition tape. And he's like, oh, and your teammates are going to be so and so and so. And like, I had never met these teammates before. Like, I had never met any of them. And so I said, okay, like, let's do this. So we send in our audition tape. And then I don't know, a month later or so, we get an email saying that we were selected to be on Eco Challenge. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, here we go. I guess this is going to be fun. But with it, they're like, okay, now that you guys are in, you have XYZ certifications you have to have. You have ABC that you need to know how to do all of these things. And it's like, those are not skills that I have. And I live in Illinois, so please tell me where I'm going to learn to sail. Like all of these things, where I'm like, I don't I don't live where these activities take place, nor do I necessarily have these like opportunities like right there in my backyard to do this. So here I am. This is 2019. So I'm like, oh, this is my first year running for the North Face. Oh, wait, now I'm trying to balance running for the North Face and learning a whole like new set of skills to be able to be on Eco Challenge and not like make a fool of myself as I'm going to be in this race. And it's like, oh, wow, that's a lot. And so I mean, you had this climbing certification, you had like whitewater rescue, swiftwater rescue, you had some sailing stuff, jungle navigation, which I mean, like jungle navigation is a course that you end up taking online because like we don't have a jungle, like just so many things like that.
Can't even believe that's real.
Oh yeah. And
Jungle
so
navigation, that's crazy.
yeah. And so like you just have like all these different things that you have to do. And so the best part is since you're racing in a team of 4 and then you have one crew person, like multiple people have to be certified in these different things. But then it's like, okay, so some teams all live in the same area where they can kind of train together and get to know their teammates' style and everything. Whereas like for us, um we were we were just all over the country. And so by being all over the country, I mean, we had one in DC, 2 of us were in Illinois, and then 2 in California. So being that far spread out, it was like, oh, if we're all going to train together, we're going to have to fly to places to be able to train together. Well, you know, if we're all going to get certified in the same stuff, then we're all going to have to fly to the same spot to get XYZ certifications that we all learn the same way. So that way, when you're out there in, you know, real world doing this under, you know, lack of sleep and, you know, 5 days in or whatever, then if someone can't remember how to do something, it's like, hey, remember how we learned to do this in whatever class, you know? So there are a lot of logistics just in getting the certifications. So before racing, I had only met my teammates, all of them together. We had all only been together once before getting to Fiji. And funny story about even just getting to Fiji. Everyone was supposed to fly into San Francisco and then from San Francisco fly to Fiji. But I was at the Rut in Bozeman before having to fly back to Illinois to pick up, you know, 3 suitcases of gear and a mountain bike, and then fly to San Francisco to then fly to Fiji. And my flight was delayed by 3 hours in Chicago. So I did not make my connecting flight in San Francisco. So my teammates are all on the plane to Fiji, and I'm not on the plane to Fiji, nor is my gear. And so this is at like 11 p.m. that I'm there in San Francisco. And they're like, okay, they're like, now you have to fly down to Los Angeles and then fly out tomorrow. And they go, if you don't, for whatever reason, make your LA flight, then you will be flown up to, I think it was Montreal was the other flight available. They're like, you will then fly to Montreal to fly to Fiji. And I was like, this does not make any sense at all. But I'm like, I hope I just make my flight. So anyway, I did make my flight to Fiji the second day, but I landed on the morning that our team was selected to do skills testing. So after basically being in airports for 2 days and then being stressed out and then flying 13 hours to Fiji, I landed at 5:30 in the morning, and at 8:30 a.m. I was out on the ropes course showing that I knew how to do the ropes stuff, which was so wild.
Crazy.
But yeah, but I mean, and that's how it is though. Like getting there is half the battle. And then once you're there, it's just dealing with jet lag, you know, making sure you just stay hydrated on that flight, making sure you stay fueled on that flight. So that way, when you land, like you have to be ready to go. Cause I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. Like you don't even know what day the race starts. They just tell you that you have to be there by a certain date. And then before the race, you're all like hanging out at the resort and like everything's nice and there's a buffet and you're talking to the other teams and getting gear ready and everyone's all happy and stuff. And then like one night they're like, okay, the race starts tomorrow. They're like, we're taking your electronics. And they're like, there will be a map waiting for you starting at like 3 a.m. And at 3 a.m., like your crew person has to load you and your pack up and get you to a certain spot on the other side of the island. And that's where the race starts.
And it's just and it's real, and you have to do all that crap, right? I mean, it's really
Yep.
it's hard as hell. It's not like there's no like huts and boat drinks and stuff, and you're just not like chilling by the water. No, it's like you're getting your ass handed to you on this challenge, pretty much, right?
Absolutely. Like they had to delay the race by a day because of a tropical storm. So they actually started a day later than they wanted to. And that just means that before the race, instead of, being somewhere in that nice hotel or resort, you're actually just out camping in the middle of the woods as this tropical storm is happening. They're like, okay, and the race is finally going to start at whatever time tomorrow. And it's like, oh, come on. So then, like, when you're out there, you're doing all of that stuff. Like, what you see on that show is actually what's happening. Like the first day, just, oh my goodness, it was supposed to be like this 50-mile paddle that you're out in the South Pacific, and it's supposed to be a 50-mile paddle, but it's only supposed to take like 12 hours or something. Well, there's no wind, so like it was an actual paddle rather than putting up the sail. So I mean, it was not a 12-hour paddle, it was a lot longer than that, and that just, oh, a lot of time on the water.
Oh my gosh, man, I can't even imagine. Like, I can't even like because like the one thing that ultra running has taught me is that what you see in a lot of these things is like it's really hard. Like all of it, there none of it is like it's funny because like when you watch these people climb mountains, right? Like somebody climbing Mount Everest, it looks like they're just walking up the mountain, right? But no, like they're not. It's like it's really hard, and like all this stuff is like just as hard as it looks like it is. And it's like it's just like crazy because like we watched it, my whole family watched it, and it looked terribly challenging. So kudos to you for doing that. So I have two more things, and then we'll wrap up this interview. And
Cool.
I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, because you're going back to it, Cocodona 250. You made a run at it this past year, and um, didn't work out for you, right? And so you're wanting to go back again this year. So last, I guess, previous year, what was your experience like there, and to make you want to go back and try it again?
Yeah, I was stupid. Yeah. So I had just finished the Pinhoti Trail 2.5 weeks before going to Cocodona. I was like, oh, I've run a bunch of miles before, so I can do it again, right? And so yeah, so the big thing about Pinhoti was the fact that over the 5 days and 7 hours that it took me, I slept less than 4 hours total. My longest sleep stop was 35 minutes during Pinhoti. So like I was not sleeping. By the end of that, like mentally, I was just wrecked. Physically, I was moving just as fast at the finish as I was at the start, but mentally, I was just not there. But after sleeping in a hotel for a couple nights after and hitting up a hot tub and having, a couple cold drinks and some good food, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm back. I'm good to go. Like this is totally fine. So I was signed up for Cocodona, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to Cocodona. And instead of even just being like, I'm going to Cocodona hoping to finish, it's like, I'm going to go to Cocodona and I'm going to win. Well, I didn't win, I didn't finish. And it was miserable. Once again, is one of those races where basically the first 11 miles are on the Black Canyon Trail. So they sucker everybody into going out way faster than they need to. they're super runnable. It's not hot. It's like very enjoyable. And then you start your basically 22-mile stretch without an aid station. And it's a mile 11 to 33. There's 9,000 feet of gain in those 22 miles, and you're just going up and over the Bradshaw Mountains. And it's basically on a Jeep road. There's very little like single track or anything on it, but fully exposed, no shade. It's hot as hell. And you're going up, I think you're going up to about 9,000 feet before you drop back down a little bit. So you're dealing with heat, altitude, and sun. And that just fried so many people so early on. But this year I'm gonna be smart and not do Pinhoti a couple of weeks before. And that's the main thing that I would change about that, I think. And also this year, you know, I don't know that I'm necessarily trying to win it this year. It's more of I'll just see what happens, and whatever happens, I'm totally fine with. Because when you start getting into stuff like 250 miles, like just finishing is already like a great thing. So, but yeah, I think I can do quite well.
So it's interesting because I interviewed a local guy. His name is Jason Thinnell, and he was talking to me about how the lack of water in sections were extremely challenging. And I guess that's something now, knowing since I guess people who ran it this past time now know that can probably prepare better to make sure they have good hydration. Because I remember him telling a story about laying down and like drinking water out of, I can't even remember the full story behind it, but it was just like crazy hard conditions out there. And I mean,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, I mean, I definitely think with your pedigree you can get it done. So so what are some of your goals? I mean, is Cocodona, would that be considered like your A goal for this year, or you got something bigger that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so honestly, it's like finishing Cocodona is a goal. So I'm actually doing the Gorge 100K out in Oregon like a month before. So I went to that race in 2017, and that was my first DNF. So it's kind of funny as I start looking at these things, because I'm like, oh, Gorge is a DNF, Cocodona is a DNF, and now I'm going back to both of those. So hopefully I'm just better prepared this time. But yeah, so I'm also doing a stage race in Iceland in July.
Wow.
6 days, 175 miles, I think. So pretty excited for that. And then I haven't really decided what I'm going to do later in the year yet. I was going to go after the FKT on the AT this year, southbound, starting in September. But I just don't really feel like this is the year for it. And I'm happy that I've been able to figure that out already this year. I mean, it's only February, but I'm just happy that I've figured that out now, rather than getting 3 weeks into it and just being like, I really don't want to be here right now. Because I mean, you're gonna have that feeling anyway, but at least I have that now and didn't get everyone there to then have that feeling, because that'd make for a very long last 3 or 4 more weeks. So I don't know. This fall, I'm still pretty open on what I'm going to do. I have thought about making a southbound attempt at the Pinhoti Trail, just to try to hold the north and southbound FKT on Pinhoti, because I honestly think I left a lot of time on the table for Pinhoti, just from never having been on the trail before. And honestly, I need to sleep more than I did, and I think I'd move quite a bit faster. But I mean, right now it's 127 hours is what I have the FKT at. And like, honestly, I think we can get it closer to under 120 hours this year, if not a little bit quicker. But like, I think it can be starting with a 4 would be nice, like 4 days and something hours.
That would be huge. That'd be
Yeah.
huge.
And
So
like, I think it's doable. Like it really is.
of course it is. And then, the one thing you learn the more we do this and see things, the more it can be done, right? Let's take for example here in Tennessee, we have the Vol State race, right? The race across the state of Tennessee. Greg Armstrong owned that record forever, right? And last year, Bob Hearn beat it. And for the longest time, no one thought that it could be beat because it was such a stout time. And then Bob comes around, breaks it very well. He breaks the supported and the unsupported course record. And now people are talking about, can it be done in under 4 days? So, it's all about the conversation and escalating to the next level, right? Because we always got to take things to the next level, which comes down to my final question, the most important question I'm going to ask you. I was talking to Taggart Van Etten. He said something about a 50K race coming down later on. What's up with that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I'm going to be in Iceland for the race that we had originally picked out. Fun fact, I'm trying to get him to come to Iceland and race this stage race. So I'll keep you guys updated on that because that could be really fun to watch him suffer.
Oh my gosh, the guy needs to get on like some mountains or something. I mean, bring him down to Tennessee. I mean, get him. I mean, there's you could get him on Pinhoti. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
hell, you could get him on the AT and the Smokies. Have him run up to Mount LeConte. Or since the guy likes the road so much, you guys can sign up for Strolling Jim, 40 miles. Laz, have a showdown there. What would be better than a showdown between you and Taggart at Strolling Jim?
Um, yeah, that's a lot of road.
Well, you know Zach Beevan I think he broke the record last year, right? So
Yep,
I mean,
that's a lot of road.
it's a lot of road and it's hard. I've ran it, and it's road and it's hard. And Last talks a lot of trash about painting stuff on the road that stays there permanently, so it doesn't even go away. So like you're running, you're seeing him talking about how his mom can run faster than you, and it's very discouraging. So yeah. So anyway,
But but
so
maybe, I mean, we could just bring him down for like the Barkley Fall Classic or something, though. I mean, there you go.
man, if you could get him to run BFC, like that would be the most amazing thing ever, because he needs to run some trails. And I asked him when I interviewed him, I was like, you get you on the mountain, and he was like, I just like to do I just don't like the mountain stuff. And I'm like, but you need to try it more. I don't think you tried it enough. And, get him down to Chattanooga with you, get him on Pinhoti, get him on Lookout Mountain. Plenty of good running, right? And
Totally.
you just ease him in nice and easy. Get him out there and get him off that treadmill, right?
Totally. I'm like, absolutely. Or we can get him down here for stump jump, that's perfect.
I actually brought up stunt jump to him, by the way. I mentioned it, and you know, and I don't think he's interested, but I don't think I think he at least needs to try. I mean, come down and try. We know he's strong enough. I mean, his legs are strong enough. Hell, look how fast he runs. There's no doubt that the guy can easily shred through some mountains. We just got to get him on a mountain, and I can like live cast it. I can live cast, like
Perfect.
I can volunteer at like an aid station, and we can literally like get him at the aid station coming through. So but anyway, I just had to bring it up because him and I was talking back and forth, and he was talking about there was a possible 50K. So I don't know. I definitely would be cool just to watch you guys run together. So, but anyway, I really appreciate it, man. This has been a good time. I could talk to you easily for much longer than this. I don't think I even snipped the surface of all the cool things that you do and all the cool things that you're doing. and it's just great stuff. And I appreciate you taking the time to be here with me tonight. And I, thank you again so much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been awesome. Let's go get tattoos and talk some more.
Hey, I got plenty.
I
I'm gonna go.
have 4, so always adding more.
Excellent. All right, guys. So that is it for my interview with Coree. And as always, if you haven't given my channel a subscribe, please do so. Give it a like and give the video a like. And as always, I will see you on the trail. Thanks, guys.